Do you see these old photos? I still keep them in this wooden box. Time flies so fast, doesn't it? It seems like just yesterday, but it's been over 40 years. I remember the day I met Nathan as clearly as if it happened yesterday. You know, I was only 25 years old then, coming from a poor family. Would you sit down with me for a while? The tea is still warm. This house has witnessed so many stories, so many smiles and tears. How long have I lived here with my children? Since Mason was just tiny. I want to tell you a story that not everyone knows. Sometimes I wonder, if I had done things differently that day, would my life have changed? Have you ever felt that sometimes a small decision can change your entire life? I remember clearly the day I met Nathan at that big company in Chicago. Oh, you can't imagine. He was tall, with a smile that lit up the entire room, and eyes as green as emeralds. The owner's son. While I was just a newly graduated secretary, wearing clothes bought from a charity shop. Do you want to hear more? This is a story about love, about betrayal, and about how life can change in the blink of an eye. How time flies. It seems like yesterday, but it's been more than 40 years. Let me try to remember exactly how it happened. Now at 62, I still remember as if it were yesterday the day I met Nathan. It was 1995. I had just turned 25. I was born into a humble family and grew up hearing that education was the only way to improve my life and escape poverty. And I believed it. I worked hard studying, completed my administrative assistant training, a profession every decent young woman wanted back then. It wasn't easy. How many nights I spent studying after work. But I managed to graduate with a lot of sweat and tears. As soon as I got my diploma, I found a job at a large company in Chicago. My goodness, how important I felt, all dressed up in my best clothes that I bought at the church thrift store. My style was a suit with a skirt and thin high heels. I worked sitting behind that secretary's desk. It was at this company that I met Nathan Reed. My God, what a man he was! Tall, with a smile that lit up the whole room, and eyes as green as emeralds. When he looked at me, it felt like the ground disappeared. Nathan was the son of the company's owner. Imagine that. While I came from a family that barely had enough to eat, he had been swimming in money since he was little. He had just graduated in business administration from a fancy college, and was there to learn his father's business. At first, I was afraid. I thought he would be one of those playboys who looked down on people like me, but I was wrong. Nathan was different, educated, gentle, treating everyone with respect, from the cleaning lady to the manager. The girls who worked there had their eyes on him, just like me, but in my mind, it was all just a daydream. The first time we really talked was at the company's end-of-year party. I was in a corner, shy, not really knowing what to do. Suddenly, he appeared beside me with 2 glasses of soda, offered one to me, and started chatting. We talked all night, discovering we had many things in common. We liked the same music, the same movies. He laughed at my jokes and made me feel special. From that day on, everything changed. Nathan always found a way to pass by my desk, always with a different excuse. A coffee here, a document there. And I, silly and happy, was melting inside. Little did I know what awaited me. We started dating in secret. Nathan didn't want anyone at the company to know. He said it was to protect me. And you know what? He was right. His father, Richard Reed, was a tough man who thought poor people were only good for work. His mother, Diana Reed, was even worse, always with her nose up as if there was a bad smell under it. Nathan was different. He took me for rides in his Cadillac, a car that was pure luxury. I still remember the smell of new leather seats. We would go out secretly to drive-in movies and bars away from downtown. It was quite an adventure. But it didn't take long for Richard to find out. My Jesus, what a day that was. I thought I was going to lose my job right there. The old man came huffing to my desk, red as a pepper, looking like he was going to explode with anger. But then something happened that I'll never forget. Nathan, that handsome young man, stepped in front of me, looked firmly at his father, and said loudly, "Dad, if Elaine leaves, I leave too." Girl, it was as if time had stopped. Everyone in the office stood open-mouthed, looking at us. Nobody believed what was happening. Nathan was standing up for me in front of everyone. Richard turned pale. His only son, the apple of his eye, doing that because of me. I was trembling like a leaf, not knowing what would happen. Nathan took my hand, looked into my eyes right there in front of everyone. He showed that he wasn't ashamed of me, that he was willing to face his father for our sake. You know, at that moment, I felt something in my chest. A warmth, a joy mixed with fear. It was love, my dear. A love that was inside me. It was 2 years like that, with ups and downs. Nathan always defending me, always by my side. We truly loved each other, the kind of love you only see in romantic movies. He introduced me to a world I didn't know existed. Fancy restaurants, brand-name clothes, all new to me. When he proposed to me, I almost fainted. It was in candlelight, with an 18-karat gold engagement ring and everything. Of course, I said yes. The wedding was quite an event. The cream of society was there, mixed with my simple family. I felt like a princess. After the ceremony, Richard called me aside. I thought a scolding was coming, but he surprised me. He hugged me tightly and said, "Take good care of my boy." It was the first time I saw him treat me like a person, like part of the family. Richard, Nathan's father, surprised us with quite a gift. An apartment in Lakeside, Michigan, not just any place but a neighboring city to Chicago, where they were opening a new branch of the company. The idea was for Nathan to take over this branch. Our honeymoon was a dream. We went to Hawaii. Imagine me, who had never left the country, suddenly walking on those beautiful beaches, seeing a blue ocean that didn't even seem real. We spent 2 weeks there, feeling like we were in a fairy tale. When we returned, it was time to face reality. We moved to the apartment in Lakeside, a luxury with a view of the lake, expensive furniture, all the best. I could hardly believe it was all ours. Nathan took over the management of the new office, and I became his executive assistant. It was strange working for my husband, but we got along well. He trusted me, let me make important decisions. I felt valued. Life seemed like a dream. We had a good job, a beautiful house to die for, and each other. On weekends, it was wonderful. We would go to the lake, have barbecues with the new friends we made. What a good crowd. In the evening, we would sit on the porch with Nathan to watch the sunset. Oh, what a beautiful thing. We would sit there drinking a little wine, talking. It was peaceful. Nathan was a sweetheart. Look, he taught me how to drive. I was terrified at first, but he had the patience of Job, staying by my side, encouraging me. And on my birthday, I almost fell over backward. Nathan surprised me with a gift I never imagined I would get in my life. A brand new Lincoln Continental. That car was pure luxury, so chic and sophisticated. At the time, everyone wanted a Continental. It was the dream car. And there I was with the keys in my hand, not believing it. I remember it as if it were today. The car parked in front of the house, shining in the sun, with a big bow on the hood. Nathan handing me the keys with that beautiful smile of his. The first time I drove that car, it felt like I was in the clouds. The leather seat, the smooth steering wheel, that new car smell. It was like a dream come true. At that time, I thought, this is it. I've made it. Oh, how happy I was back then. I thought I had turned my life around, that my life of poverty was behind me. I woke up every day thanking God for everything I had achieved. But you know how life is. It always has its plans. One day I started feeling strange. Nausea. Dizziness. At first, I thought it was just work fatigue. But when my monthly visit was missed, my heart raced. At that time, we didn't have effective pharmacy tests. I went to the doctor, anxious and hopeful. When he confirmed, I could barely contain my tears of joy. I was pregnant. When I told Nathan, he spun me around in the air, laughing like a child. "I'm going to be a father, Elaine," he shouted. At that moment, I thought my happiness couldn't be greater. I kept working, of course. It wasn't easy. The nausea would catch me in the middle of meetings. Sometimes I had to run to the bathroom. But I was stubborn. I wanted to prove that I could be a mother and a professional at the same time. And then, in 2000, Mason arrived. Our son, a chubby baby. My God, what a moment when the doctor placed that little bundle in my arms. I felt a love I didn't know existed. Nathan was crying like a baby too, all silly with his son. Mason was the spitting image of his father, you know, with the same green eyes that melted hearts. At that hour, looking at my husband holding our son, I thought, this is it. My life is complete. Ah, my dear, I remember as if it were today. Mason had just turned 15 days old when my family came to visit. My father Walter and my mother Patricia, poor things, were all silly. It was their first grandchild. They couldn't stop fussing over the baby. My 3 brothers also came. They were younger than me, still single, all grown men. They were making jokes, saying they would teach their nephew to play ball. We were there in the living room having coffee and eating that cake that only my mother knew how to make. The conversations were going back and forth, everyone wanting to know the news. I was with Mason in my arms, trying to participate in everything. Well, I was being very careful with my diet. Mother wouldn't stop giving me advice. "My daughter," she would say, "be careful with this, be careful with that. You can't eat this because it gives the boy colic." And I was there listening to everything, trying to follow every word. I wanted to do everything right for my baby. And it wasn't just because of Mason. Mom kept insisting, "Elaine, you have to get back to your pre-baby body so you don't lose your husband." Imagine that. She wanted me to buy high-waisted shapewear and even a girdle to tighten my belly. She kept explaining and I was thinking, well, if Mom is saying it, I'll do it. You know, I decided to follow her advice to the letter. Ah, my girl, my mother was a phenomenon. 4 children she had, and skinny as can be. No one would say that woman had had children. I was impressed. I wanted to be like her. And isn't it that in the middle of all that conversation, with everyone talking at the same time, eating cake and drinking coffee, Mom mentions Heather? When I heard her say Heather's name, my heart jumped. I was immediately curious. "Remember your friend Heather, Elaine?" she said. How could I forget Heather? She was my best friend when we were children. We played together, slept at each other's houses. But life separated us. You know how it is. My mother continued. Well, she's going through some difficulties. She's on her 4th child, her 2nd marriage. Things aren't easy for her. My heart tightened. We grow up, take different paths, but the affection remains. "How's my dear Autumn?" I then asked my mother about my beloved goddaughter. Oh, how I loved that girl. I remembered her as a little one, all energetic, running around Heather's house. What happened was that I decided to study, to dedicate myself to books. I spent nights bent over notebooks, dreaming of a better future. My parents, Walter and Patricia, wouldn't give me peace. "Elaine, study girl, who has education has everything in life," they kept repeating to me and my brothers. And I obeyed. After all, I thought that deep down they didn't want me to end up like them. Meanwhile, Heather got involved with a boy from the city, a Tyler, son of the store owner. Life had separated us, you know. While I was there with my parents pushing me toward studies, Heather, poor Heather, she didn't have that encouragement. Her mother, Aunt Michelle, God rest her soul, was my mother's sister, but had unfortunately passed away early. And her father, Uncle Gregory Thompson, was an old-fashioned man. He didn't care about these things like education. He wanted Heather at home, washing, ironing, cooking. "A woman doesn't need education. She needs to know how to take care of the house," he would say. And so Heather was left without perspective, without dreams. In the blink of an eye, Heather got pregnant. It was quite a commotion in the family. Aunt Michelle, if she were alive, would have almost fallen backward. Uncle Gregory, he almost fainted when he found out. "Oh, my daughter, God help me, what a disgrace," he would say, crossing himself. Tyler, so as not to be talked about in the city, decided to take responsibility for the child. They quickly moved in together. There was no church wedding or anything, but they lived together as if they were husband and wife. They ended up settling in Uncle Gregory's house. It was a simple brick house, but it was what they had at the moment. The uncle, with that grumpy way of his, ended up accepting it. "Since it's done, let it be," he would grumble. Autumn grew up there in that environment. She ran around the yard, played with the chickens, climbed the guava trees in the backyard. From time to time, I would send her little presents, a doll, some ribbons for her hair. I had hoped that even with all the difficulties, Heather would raise the girl well. Their life wasn't easy. Tyler worked in the fields, earned a pittance, barely enough for expenses, but they were managing as best they could. My mother made a sad face and said, "Oh, my daughter, it seems things aren't good. Autumn doesn't get along with her stepfather. She's suffering a lot, poor thing." I was devastated. How could that be? A child doesn't deserve a nasty stepfather. My heart tightened. I didn't understand. I asked my mother, but Autumn's father seemed to love Heather so much. What could have happened? Why did she separate from him, Mom? My mother shook her head, discouraged. He cheated on her, daughter. He left with another woman, left Heather alone with the children. I was speechless. How could a man do that, abandon his family like that? And Autumn, so small, having to deal with all this, a bad stepfather. At that moment, I felt something strange in my chest, a mixture of anger, sadness, and, I don't know, a desire to do something. I couldn't leave my goddaughter in this situation. She deserved better. I kept thinking, could Nathan and I help? We had a good life, a big apartment. Maybe Autumn could come live with us for a while? I looked at Mason's crib, my newborn son. I thought that perhaps Autumn could even help me with him. It would be good for everyone. Oh, if I had known, if I could go back in time. But we never know what destiny holds for us, right? At that moment, I just wanted to help. Little did I know that that decision would change everything, absolutely everything. After my mother talked about Autumn, I kept thinking about it. That night, Nathan and I talked. I thought it was a good idea to bring the girl to live with us. I said we could make a difference in her life. But then came the part that made me thoughtful. Nathan suggested putting Mason in daycare. He said that this way, after he grew up a bit, we would have the freedom to continue our trips and outings. Arriving at that apartment, I saw Autumn's eyes widen in amazement. Imagine a girl who had never left that small town in the interior suddenly finding herself in such a tall building. We lived on the 6th floor, but the building had 22 floors in total. A colossus of concrete and glass, as they said at the time. The little one was open-mouthed with the elevator. No wonder for someone who only knew stairs, that metal box that went up by itself was almost magical. I remember as if it were today. She grabbed my skirt tightly when the elevator started to move. Poor thing, she was trembling like a leaf. But it was when we entered the apartment that the real spectacle happened. As soon as she laid eyes on the view of the lake from the living room window, the tears came. They weren't tears of sadness. No, it was pure emotion. That infinite blue, the waves breaking on the sand. It was breathtaking, even for us who were already used to it. At that moment, my mother's heart spoke louder. I hugged the girl and said, "Autumn, my dear, if you want, I'll take you to see the lake up close. Look, not even Mason knows it yet. How about you two going together for the first time?" Her little eyes sparkled. She could only nod in agreement. She was too emotional to speak. Autumn's room wasn't a palace, you see, but it had everything a young girl needed. A comfortable bed, a nice wardrobe, even a small bathroom just for her. Pure luxury by the standards she was used to. That same afternoon, I decided to take them both to the lake. Nathan, poor thing, had to go back to work. Work doesn't wait. So there we went. Me, Autumn, and Mason in the stroller. You know, my girl, that afternoon I felt something strange, a connection with Autumn that I couldn't explain. Looking at her, I saw a beautiful girl, light brown hair, almost blonde in the sun, and green eyes. They weren't that deep green of Nathan's. No, it was a softer shade, like a new leaf in spring. The lake was a feast. Autumn ran on the sand, laughed with the waves at her feet. Little Mason just slept. It was quite an afternoon. But as not everything is roses, the wind started to get strong, the kind that cuts the skin. I was worried about Mason, still so small. I decided it was time to go back. That night, exhausted from the day's rush, I prepared a quick macaroni and cheese for the family. Autumn liked my cooking. She ate well. Lying in bed, sleep stubbornly refused to come. Beside me, Nathan gently snored, overcome by the fatigue of work. The sound of the lake's waves entered through the half-open window, a constant rhythm that lulled my restless thoughts. In the days that followed, I enrolled Autumn in the private school near the apartment. The girl, with her wide green eyes, faced everything with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. The new uniform, the shiny books, the well-dressed classmates. Every detail was a new world for her. I would drive her to school and pick her up every day. At home, Autumn showed herself to be incredibly helpful. At the slightest sign of Mason's crying, she would run to the crib, eager to help. Her face would light up at the sight of the baby, but I, cautious, wouldn't allow her to pick him up. Mason was still very fragile, too soft for inexperienced hands. A housekeeper came once a week, leaving little housework for Autumn. Still, the girl insisted on helping. She would dust the furniture carefully, her face furrowed in concentration, sweep the floor with a broom almost her size, wash the dishes, determined to be useful. Watching Autumn in these tasks, a knot would form in my throat. A child her age should be playing with dolls, running in the park, not worrying about household chores. But for her, these small tasks seemed to be a comfort, a way to feel part of the family. Time passed, and the little 10-year-old became a young lady. It was earlier than I expected. I taught her with all care how to use feminine hygiene products. The problem was that the poor thing was terribly embarrassed at school. Her monthly period came right there in the classroom, staining her entire uniform, and some students made fun of her. And not to mention that every month she had very strong menstrual cramps. Seeing that girl suffering like that was heartbreaking. I kept racking my brain to help her. I made peppermint tea that my great-grandmother said was good, put a hot water bottle on her belly. Autumn, poor thing, would turn white as paper, trembling like a leaf. I would spend sleepless nights taking care of her. Nathan was all clumsy with these women's things. He wanted to help but didn't know how. My Mason, what a lovely little thing taking his first steps. Those chubby little legs, a bit awkward but so full of life. Those little green eyes inherited from his father shone with curiosity. He was always messing with everything, discovering the world around him. Every piece of furniture, every corner of the house seemed like a great adventure to him. It was quite a to and fro, but I loved seeing it. That phase is so charming. You just want to squeeze and protect them. Autumn, so sensible for her age, called my attention with her care, always keeping an eye on Mason. "Aunt Elaine," she said one day with that serious voice, "soon Mason will be climbing on everything. Better put protection on the windows so he doesn't fall out." It was like a hammer to the chest. I felt silly for not having thought of that before. Me, who had always been so careful with everything. But Autumn was too smart. She knew things. That same week, I made sure to get those window guards. The trips to the lake became a sacred routine for us. It was our way of escaping the world. 2 or 3 times a week, there we would go, stepping on that soft sand, feeling the lake breeze. Mason loved it. He was all silly with the water, letting out little screams every time a wave came and wet his little feet. And Autumn, Autumn seemed to flourish under that sun. Her skin would get golden, her hair lighter, and her eyes, they seemed even greener. That girl was transforming before my eyes. One night, while I was finishing tidying up the kitchen, I heard a muffled sob coming from Autumn's room. It was that quiet crying, as if she wanted to hide it from everyone, not wanting to bother anyone. My chest tightened right away. I dropped the dish towel and went there. When I opened the door, I saw the poor girl all curled up in bed, her eyes swollen from crying so much. I asked what had happened, and she, with that sad little voice, said she was dying of homesickness for her mother and everyone at her house. My heart became heavy. I knew that no matter how well we took care of her, a mother's love is something no one can replace. I sat on the edge of the bed and stroked her hair, trying to calm her. I spoke kindly that next weekend we could visit Heather. I thought that would help. I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, but the crying was still there, stuck in her throat. I knew it wasn't easy for her, away from her mother, siblings, and grandfather, but I was doing what I could. I promised we would see her mother soon, and she tried to smile, even with a heavy heart. On the weekend, we did what we promised. We put Autumn in the car and went to Heather's house. When we arrived there, the girl couldn't even wait. She ran to her mother and threw herself into her arms. The two hugged so tightly, crying as if the world had stopped at that moment. It was beautiful to see, you know. My chest filled with emotion, a mixture of relief and jealousy. It was their love, you know. That mother-daughter bond that not even distance breaks. Heather, poor thing, received me with a smile and a tight hug. She said that life had improved a lot since we started sending a little money every month. Autumn's siblings were well cared for. eating properly. They were adorable, running around the house full of energy. I was happy to see that at least things were easier for Heather. She told me that she was managing to keep the house in order, that they no longer went through those difficulties of before. Her husband Kyle was working steadily. Seeing that made me more at ease, knowing that somehow I was helping this family, even from afar, eased my heart. But at the same time, I knew that the homesickness Autumn felt for her mother wouldn't go away so easily. That hug of hers with Heather told me everything. The girl needed that love up close, and we had to find a way to balance it all. Autumn was always a very dear girl. She had her close friends. They were always together here and there. They would come to our house, make a good mess. Those laughs of theirs filled the house, you know. It was beautiful to see. From time to time, the girls would even stay at our house, all sleeping together in Autumn's room, and the night was just laughter and whispered conversations until late hours. I felt happy seeing Autumn surrounded by friends, so at ease. It seemed like a peaceful phase. She was growing up well. In school, she couldn't be better. Autumn always got excellent grades, was studious. The teachers were always praising her. I was very proud of her, and Nathan was too. He would tell everyone how well the girl was doing in school, how dedicated she was. She was on the right path, you know. I saw in her a beautiful future, full of opportunities. I had gone back to work at the office. Nathan had managed to fit me in there again. It was tiring, I won't lie. Mason was in private school, a smart boy full of energy. Leaving him there broke my heart, but I knew it was for his own good. We managed as best we could. The routine was heavy, but things were going along. But the truth is that despite everything, Autumn was loved by all of us. I loved that girl as if she were my daughter. Nathan also seemed to have a lot of affection for her. And Mason, he wouldn't let go of Autumn. The two were like two peas in a pod. I knew that house had a lot of love. Girl, we who are mothers or take care of children always notice the changes. I noticed Autumn growing up, her body changing. At 13, she was no longer that skinny little girl who was always running around the house. Time was molding the girl. Her hips were getting wider, her face more defined, a young lady's manner taking over. I, of course, looked at all this with affection, but also with a certain concern. But never did I expect what happened. One afternoon, I saw Autumn a bit nauseated, quiet, different. It seemed like something was wrong. I asked what it was, and she, somewhat awkwardly, told me that her period was late by a month already. "Aunt Elaine," she said with that look of someone who didn't know what was happening. Girl, my heart jumped. That left me too worried. There's no way not to think the worst, if you know what I mean. I immediately asked, "But Autumn, my child, is there something you need to tell me? Are you pregnant? Is that it?" She was silent, lowered her head, and I discovered that knot in my chest. Anyone who raises a girl never wants to go through this, especially at this age. I asked, somewhat in shock, "But whose child is this, Autumn? Who is the father?" And she, with that guilty face, said it was from a friend at school, but refused to say the boy's name. "What do you mean, a friend from school?" I asked, confused. But Autumn just repeated that she couldn't tell who it was. That left me groundless, not knowing what to do. A 13-year-old girl, pregnant, and not telling who the father was. How do you solve something like that? So, having no other way out, I went to talk to Nathan. I thought Nathan would be worried, of course. Who wouldn't be? But when I told him, the shock he took. I never saw Nathan like that. He turned pale, looking like he had taken a blow. His eyes widened. His breathing became heavy. That shock left me even more nervous. He had always been firm, never easily shaken, but this time it was different. Suddenly, Nathan became furious, an anger I didn't expect, walking around the room, hitting his hand on the table. "Autumn pregnant? This is inadmissible." I, who was already frightened, became even more worried. He said he was going to talk to her and went to the room huffing with anger. But then a part happened that left me intrigued. He entered Autumn's room, started arguing with her, saying she had been irresponsible, that she couldn't have let herself be carried away like that. But what caught me was that he didn't demand to know who the father was. He didn't insist, didn't make a point of knowing the name of that school friend. And that bothered me a lot. I went to sleep with that fleabane. But what caught me was that he didn't demand to know who the father was. He didn't insist, didn't make a point of knowing the name of that school friend. And that bothered me a lot. I went to sleep with that flea behind my ear. Something wasn't right. Now, what happened next, you won't believe. Oh my God, that was the worst day of my life. I was still trying to digest the news of Autumn's pregnancy, and that week I arranged with her that we would go to the hospital to start her prenatal care. My heart was tight just thinking about how to tell this to Heather, her mother. How would I explain that I let her 13-year-old daughter get pregnant? I knew Heather would blame me, judge me, and in a way I already felt guilty. That afternoon I left work early. I wanted to organize some documents, get Autumn's things, and see how I would resolve everything. I arrived home thinking about the hustle and bustle of daily life, but as soon as I entered the apartment, something strange hit me. I heard some muffled laughter, some conversations, an atmosphere of excitement. But then came a strange silence. The sound was coming from my bedroom. My heart raced in a way I can't even explain. It was a tightness, an anguish. I walked slowly, step by step, trying to understand what was going on. With each step I took, the feeling that something was out of place increased. The silence was so heavy it suffocated me. When I got near the door, I realized the noise was coming from the bathroom. Standing there, I felt a chill down my spine that I had never felt before. My body already knew what my eyes had not yet seen. I opened the door slowly, with my heart in my mouth, and what I saw, my God, was the most disturbing scene I had ever seen in my entire life. There they were, Nathan and Autumn, doing what you can already imagine. There was no denying what my eyes were seeing. I was paralyzed. The shock was so great that I lost my ground. That man I had trusted my life to, the father of my son, was there with the girl I had as a daughter. And the worst was seeing that it wasn't unwanted. Autumn seemed to be involved, seemed to like it. It was consensual, and that was like a final blow. Right there, I understood a serious case of betrayal was happening right under my roof. The two got such a big shock when they saw me at the door. Autumn widened her eyes, and Nathan, terrified, gently pushed her away, stuttering, "Sorry, Elaine, sorry." That was like a knife in my chest. And Autumn, the girl I had so much love for, the one I saw as a daughter, let out a, "Forgive me, Aunt," with a face of regret that didn't convince me. At that moment, I didn't know what to think anymore. Who were these people in front of me? I turned my back, full of disgust and anger, and said without looking back, "Finish what you're doing." I left the bathroom with my heart in pieces. I went straight to the wardrobe, not knowing how to hold myself together. My legs were shaking. My head was spinning. I could barely breathe. But I knew I couldn't stay one more minute in that house. My entire life crumbled at once. I started packing my bags desperately, throwing clothes into the suitcases without even thinking straight. My hands were shaking. All I wanted was to disappear, to pick up Mason from school and go far away. My head couldn't process what had just happened. Nathan and Autumn? The man I loved? The girl I cared for as a daughter? How was I so blind? The pain was unbearable, but I couldn't cry. Not there, not in front of them. I needed to leave before my world completely fell apart. While I was packing everything, Nathan came after me, wrapped in a towel, with the most shameless face in the world. "Elaine, please don't make any decisions in the heat of the moment," he said, as if that would calm me down, as if that would erase what I had just seen. He was trying to speak calmly, but I could feel the desperation in his voice. He wanted to make me think, as if I could forgive that, as if I could forget. But I simply couldn't believe what was happening. With each word from him, it seemed like my head would explode more. I looked at him and no longer saw the man I loved, the father of Mason, my husband. I only saw a traitor, a monster. How could he do this to me, to Autumn? How could he destroy our life like this, in front of me, without shame, without remorse? I finished closing the suitcases, my hands still shaking, my head racing, and at that moment, I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. Suddenly, it came to my mind that Autumn was pregnant with Nathan's child. I've always been a bit slow to think. That must be why I never suspected anything before. It was all there in front of me, and I didn't see it. Before leaving, passing through the corridor, Autumn's room was open. I decided to enter. She was already dressed, crying like a small child. My desire was to slap that wretch in the face, but I held myself back. I took a deep breath and asked, since when she had been sleeping with my husband. Sobbing, she said, "Aunt, it's been a short time." That made my blood boil. I yelled at her, "Aunt, don't call me that. I took you in, and this is what I get in return." I didn't even recognize my own voice from so much anger. Autumn fell to her knees as if she had been shot. "I love Nathan," she said. "We were going to tell you." Those words were like stabs in my chest, each syllable hurting more than the other. That's when the scoundrel Nathan appeared, saying that, yes, they were going to tell me, but neither of them had the courage. He said he fell in love with Autumn and didn't even realize it. When he saw it, he had already gotten close to her, and it was reciprocal. I stood there, listening to those lame excuses. My world was falling apart, and they were talking about love, about passion. What kind of feeling was this that destroyed an entire family? Nathan, with that face of a repentant dog, tried to explain more. Said they didn't plan any of this, that it happened, as if that justified anything, as if that erased the betrayal, the lie. I looked at Autumn, that girl I raised as a daughter, and at Nathan, the man I loved for so many years. I didn't recognize either of them anymore. They were strangers to me now. At that moment, I felt the weight of all these years. But now, if I tell you what happened, you wouldn't believe the absurdity. I was leaving with the suitcase toward the door, determined to go to the school to pick up Mason. But then Nathan, that shameless man, ran to the door and prevented me from leaving. He said with that nerve, "No, you're not leaving. I'm leaving and taking Autumn with me. You stay here with our son until you calm down." Can you believe something like that? I was open-mouthed, not believing what I was hearing. Nathan wanting to take Autumn as if she were a prize or something like that, and I would stay. At that moment, I felt an anger I had never felt before. I looked him straight in the eyes and said with a voice that didn't even seem like mine, "Then I'll go get Mason, and when I come back, I don't want anyone here, no one, you hear me well? Nathan stood there, looking at me as if he didn't recognize me anymore. The wretch Autumn was in a corner, crying softly, but at that hour, I couldn't feel sorry for either of them. I left, slamming the door. I think all the neighbors heard the commotion. My head was racing. How had my life turned upside down like this in the blink of an eye? On the way to the school, the tears finally came. I cried like a child, driving like a madwoman, only thinking about my son, about the life we would have from then on. I arrived at the school all disheveled, my eyes swollen. The teacher in the room looked at me, alarmed, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get my son and disappear from there, disappear from that city, from that life that was no longer mine. The problem was that when I was in the car with Mason, I felt directionless. I was afraid to go back home, so I decided to go to my mother's house. I needed someone to talk to. It would be late arriving at her house. It was really very far from Lakeside. I had a lot of time to think on the way. I started remembering the times we went to the lake. Then it came to my mind that Nathan, beneath those sunglasses, observed Autumn in her swimsuit. But I never thought it was with that kind of look, you know. He seemed like a father. I didn't know what to think anymore. Several memories came to me. When he took her to school by car, the two of them often went alone. When I went out and they stayed at home. So yes, they had their opportunities, created by me perhaps, but I really didn't imagine it. Autumn had a beautiful body, the skin, the hair, and the beautiful smile. Yes, she became a beautiful girl, and certainly, Nathan fell in love. Could it be that he took responsibility for her pregnancy? And that theater he put on when he discovered she was pregnant? Honestly, it was too many questions for my head that was already exploding with pain. The more I thought, the more confused I became. How did I not see any of this before? How was I so blind? I looked at Mason sleeping in the back seat, and my heart tightened. How was I going to explain all this to him one day? How were we going to continue life after something like this? When I finally arrived at my mother's house, it was already late at night. I knocked on the door with my heart in my hand, Mason in my arms, not knowing how I was going to tell her everything. My mother opened the door, and just by looking at my face, she already knew something serious had happened. She hugged me tightly without saying anything, and at that moment, I broke down. I cried like I had never cried before. Look, my father and my brothers heard everything open-mouthed, not believing what was happening. For them, Autumn was still a child, you know? We were there, racking our brains to know how to tell Heather, my cousin, Autumn's mother. What a situation. And there I was, having to manage on my own with Mason. Now I was a single mother. My mother, poor thing, arranged a little corner for us to sleep. It seemed like I had gone back in time, sleeping at my parents' house again. The next day, my mother, father, and I went to Heather's house. When she saw us without Autumn, she turned white as wax. At first, poor thing, she thought a disaster had happened. Imagine the shock. After I said Autumn was fine, Heather calmed down a bit. Uncle Gregory was also there, listening to everything with that closed face of his. I started telling what happened slowly, choosing my words. But there was no way. The two were shocked. They couldn't believe what the girl had done. Uncle Gregory, with that rough way of his, couldn't hold back. He hit the table hard and let out, "What kind of shamelessness is this? She lost herself in life, just like you, Heather." His voice came out hoarse, full of anger and disappointment. Heather, poor thing, lowered her head. You could see those words hit deep. The uncle continued grumbling, talking about how the women in the family had no sense. I stood there not really knowing what to say, watching that sad scene unfold. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Uncle Gregory walked from one side to the other, huffing like an angry bull. Heather, quiet in a corner, seemed to want to disappear. And to make matters worse, she was going to be a grandmother. Heather stood there not knowing what to say. It was too much for her head. The girl she entrusted to us to care for, pregnant by my husband. Heather started crying, saying it was her fault, that she shouldn't have let Autumn go live with us. I tried to calm her, but I didn't really know what to say. Everyone was lost in that confusion. Well, what I know is that I didn't have the courage to go back to the apartment. I decided to stay at my parents' house for a few days. My heart was broken, and the two of them were my safe harbor. I couldn't even think about entering that apartment again. I hired a lawyer, one of those who resolve separation matters. He contacted Nathan, that scoundrel, and what I discovered left me jaw-dropped. You can't even imagine. Nathan, that shameless man, asked me for a divorce, but that's not all. He wanted to marry Autumn. He said he was going to take responsibility for her child and everything. I was shocked. And there's more. Since I didn't go back to the apartment, the two were living there as lovers, in my house, in my bed. Oh, my daughter, what hatred I felt. It seemed like I was going to explode. Time passed, and I ended up signing the divorce. What choice did I have? We divided the assets. I even had a little money, thank God. But I was there, a mother starting from scratch. You know what's sadder? Seeing everything you built in life go down the drain like that. So many years of marriage. So much love thrown away. And why? Because of a girl. At first, I could only feel anger toward her. But after a while, I started to think better. The truth is that the scoundrel was him, Nathan. He was the one who should have behaved properly, right? He was the adult in the story, the married one. I kept thinking, if it hadn't been with Autumn, he would have been with someone else. It was just a lack of shame in the face, really. Men, when they want to misbehave, find an excuse for everything. Autumn, poor thing, was just a girl. He took advantage of her innocence. I'm not saying she's not to blame, but he was the responsible one. Sometimes I would imagine how it would have been if I had noticed earlier, if I had come home earlier someday, or if someone had told me. But it doesn't help to think about what could have been. What's past is past. Now was the time to look ahead, to take care of my Mason. What happened next was that I bought a little house for us there, in my mother's city, in a neighborhood nearby. It was small, but it was ours. A little corner, just for us. I got a job at an office nearby. At first, it was difficult. Everything new. Me alone with Mason. But little by little I got used to it. Got the hang of things. To my surprise, my ex-in-laws called me one day. They offered a good house of theirs in the city. They said they were going to put it in Mason's name. I was a bit suspicious at first, but I ended up accepting. I thought, it's for my son's future. But I made it very clear that we weren't going to live there. It was just for Mason when he came of age. The grandparents, Richard and Diana, always came to see Mason. It was quite a celebration. They brought presents, pampered the boy. There was no one who could stand so much spoiling, but I made a deal with them. Never to tell me anything about Nathan. I didn't want to know about his life, nor did I want him to know about mine. It was better that way, a turned page. But between us, I did have curiosity, but I never revealed it to them. But then, in one of these visits, Richard and Diana surprised me. The two, with that pompous way of theirs, called me to talk privately. I thought, here comes a bomb. But not at all. They told me, eye to eye, that what their son did was very wrong. Imagine, Richard, with that deep voice of his, said, "My daughter, Nathan disappointed us. What he did is unforgivable." And Diana, holding my hand, completed, "Dear, you have all our support. Mason is our grandson, and you will always be family." I was open-mouthed, you see. Those two, who I thought were so full of themselves, so distant, giving me support. I confess I was moved. They even offered to help more with Mason. At that moment, I saw that I had judged them wrongly. Behind all that pomp, they had a good heart. I left that conversation with a lighter heart, knowing that I had their support, that they didn't blame me, was a relief. And for Mason to have his grandparents close was a blessing. They could give what I alone couldn't. It was good to see that even after everything, there were still good people on our side. You know what's funny? Mason ended up seeing his grandparents more than his own father. Nathan disappeared from the world. He would show his face occasionally, but the grandparents, they were present. They would come on weekends, take Mason for walks. Sometimes I would feel my heart tighten, wondering if it was right. But I saw my son's joy and let it be. With time, I came to terms with my situation. Life goes on. When Mason was 11, look what happened. I ended up getting involved with his school teacher, Derek Collins. He was a widower, had 2 small children, Olivia and Ethan. Derek and I got closer, and it happened again with me. I fell in love. Who would have thought, after everything I went through? We ended up moving in together. We went to his house, which was bigger, and I put mine up for rent. His children were adorable, very well-mannered. They got along great with Mason. It was beautiful to see them playing together, laughing. It seemed like life was giving us a new chance. And then, to complete the happiness, we had our little princess, Sophie. Ah, what joy that was! Mason, all silly with his little sister, and my other children too. It was quite a family. Derek was such a different man from Nathan. He treated Mason as if he were his own son, and I loved his children as if they were mine. We formed a family. Of course, it had its challenges. Raising 4 children is no joke, but we helped each other, supported each other. Many years have passed, and I still often wonder if I could ever forgive. Sleepless nights, silent tears falling as I remember old wounds. The betrayal of Nathan and Autumn left a void within me that seemed impossible to fill. Today, watching Sophie playing in the garden, I suddenly realized that the journey of forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain, but accepting it as part of my life. I've learned to love myself more, understanding that I wasn't the cause of that betrayal. Forgiveness doesn't come in a moment of enlightenment. It comes bit by bit, like small raindrops seeping into parched soil. There are days when I still feel angry, but that anger no longer consumes my soul as it once did. I cannot say that I've completely forgiven them, but I've forgiven myself for not seeing the truth, for blaming myself for too long. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but liberating oneself from the burden of resentment. Today, as I write these lines, I feel an unusual sense of relief. Perhaps this is the most precious gift that life has given me after everything that happened. The ability to continue living, loving, and hoping. If my story has touched your heart, please share and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories about healing soul wounds. Life always gives us second chances, and I believe the same will come to you.